Once we fail, we do not forget the fail. It's called the fear of failure. And if you're dealing with that fear of failure today, join the club. So many of us are. And in this video, I just want to give you some insights on how to deal with the fear of failure. Do you guys remember the very first F you ever received on a paper? And I know some of you are like, Trey, I never got an F. What are you talking about? I got straight A's. Well, good for you. I got my fair share of F's growing up, I'm sure. But the first F I ever remember getting, I was in college. And I think it was my sophomore year, and I was writing a paper on John Milton. And so I went to the library on Saturday, got all my material, sat down on Sunday, and thought I would just write this 8-page paper on Milton Sunday afternoon, which I thought I did a good job with. And then I handed it in to my professor on Monday. Well, when I got my paper back, I'll never forget the F right there on that paper. Matter of fact, I still remember the number grade he gave me as well. It was a 54. I mean, how do you get a 54 on a paper? Well, come to find out, my professor, bless his heart, also taught a whole semester class on John Milton. I don't even think he read papers that were done on John Milton. I think he just gave him an F and was done with it. But how in the world do I remember a paper that I wrote 20 plus years ago, 25 years ago? How do I remember the number grade? I don't remember any other grade I received in college, but I'll never forget that grade because that F, man, it just resonates in your brain. And I think that goes back from even the times we were in first and second grade, we had a fear of failure. Failure today, join the club, so many of us are. And in this video, I just want to give you some insights on how to deal with the fear of failure. So if you're struggling with the fear of failure, again, we all have been there. But when it comes to failing isn't a point for us to quit. I can't fail a paper and say, well, I'm done. I'm not taking English Lit anymore. Man, that should spearhead us to go forward and even do more or try to get that grade up. I mean, when we fail, we are in good company. You look at the number of people who have failed over the years, man, we are within the genius realm of people. I mean, if you use a Dyson vacuum, you can be thankful that Sir James Dyson failed over 5,000 times until he got it right. If you enjoy the NBA, you can be thankful that Michael Jordan failed at making the 8th grade basketball team, which motivated him to make the high school team. You know, all these scenarios, if you're a history buff and you're thankful for Abraham Lincoln and the work that he did in freeing slaves and ending slavery, you can be thankful for the numbers of times he failed in politics and even in his relationships to allow him to get to the point where he did finally succeed. You see, failure is just a part of life. And we don't have to fear failure. So many of us, as we think of ideas or we're going to do this, or I've got an idea for that, or I'm going to put out this, video, or I'm going to try this invention, and we just stay back from it because we're afraid to fail. I remember sitting in my house there in North Carolina, and we had 4 kids, and our salary just wasn't cutting it. And I'm talking to my wife, and it's, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And there was one thing I knew how to do, and other than the pastoring that I was doing, and that was martial arts. And I looked at her and I said, well, I mean, I know how to teach martial arts, but man, I'm scared to open a school Because what if somebody questions me, or what if somebody comes around that's better than me, or somebody challenges me, like Cobra Kai, and I don't have the skills to defend myself. What was the battle going on in my head? It was the fear of failure, the fear of not being accepted. So I could have sat there on the couch and came up with 1,000 excuses on why I should never start a martial arts school. And man, I did. I didn't start one right away because the fear of failure, it's that irrational fear that we will not succeed. Who knows if you're going to succeed or not? And who cares if you don't? But we have this fear of not making it. And not only is it a fear of not succeeding, it's a fear that causes procrastination. And so now, man, I forget it. And we procrastinate until the time that we just don't do it anymore. And that fear of failure can keep us from so many things. If I would have given in to the fear of failure, I would have missed out on one of the coolest things I had ever done in my life in starting Spicer Super Kick Taekwondo. Man, Carrie and I started that, and we grew out of the gymnasium that we were renting, and we got our own studio, and we bought the mirrors and the floor, and I've got pictures of us setting all that up and how much fun we had doing that in the early years. And man, my kids grew up doing flips and enjoying all the pads of Taekwondo. And it actually got to the point that it became so successful that Carrie and I had to decide on whether we were going to keep the business or stay in ministry, because we just got to a point we couldn't do both. And it was great, but I would have missed all of that had the fear of failure got the best of me. Now, I think we look at many examples in the Bible, and if you will, let me look at some examples here out of Joshua. I can't prove Joshua had the fear of failure, but as you look at Joshua chapter 1, there was definitely some fear going on, because God told him over and over, Joshua, don't be afraid. Joshua, don't be afraid. So then how do we go from Joshua, don't be afraid, to chapter 6 saying that his fame was spread abroad all over? It was because he overcame the fear of failure. So what were the 4 steps that Joshua took to overcome the fear of failure? Number 1 is he had to start. In Joshua chapter 1 and verse 1, it says, God tells Joshua, get up and get over this Jordan. Man, Joshua, it's time to move on. And it's time to get up, put the past behind you, and go. I don't care if you've never done this before. I don't care if you've never led before. I've been preparing you for such a time as this. Listen, if you are scared to do something, get up and get going. Take those first steps and see what God has for you. Number 2, you need to pray. Joshua, after he crossed the Jordan, had to get alone with God and look over Jericho and figure out what was going on. He prayed. He was trying to come up with a game plan on what he had to do. And so he put all this together by way of prayer. And while he was there, I'm convinced that Joshua was trying to come up with a plan. And okay, so looking at Jericho, how can I strategize and how can this happen? And as he was praying, God helped him put this plan together. Man, if you've got something you want to accomplish or do, get the notepad out. Start writing things down. Pray over that. Allow God to guide in that. And man, before you know it, by just starting and praying and putting this plan together, you're going to see it all take place. And then he takes this plan, he puts it together, he does as God leads him, and Joshua becomes a success. He took the plunge. He's like, all right, I don't know. This sounds really weird. This is the craziest battle plan I've ever seen. But if God said I need to march around the walls of Jericho blowing trumpets, let's do it. And he did what God commanded him to do without the fear of failure. He took the plunge, and man, did he succeed. There was no turning back once he started, and he didn't have to turn back, because we all know the end of the story. The walls of Jericho came tumbling down. Listen, the fear of failure could be holding you back from doing something great that God wants you to do. And I am encouraging you right now to get up, pray, make the plan, take the plunge, and watch God do something amazing as he puts it all together, only in the way that he can. Don't allow the fear of failure to be an obstacle. Become an overcomer and see what God can do. And if you know someone that can be helped by this, please share it, like, and subscribe. And we got many more videos coming on how we can overcome the obstacles in life.